we are in a society where um, you have people who want to react immediately to certain situations. Um, but before you can go to war, you have to go to training. And Ho Chi Minh, no, I'm sorry, Chairman Mao. He wrote a work on guerrilla warfare, and he explained that in guerrilla warfare, that before the warrior learn how to use a weapon, he must be educated. Because his argument that is the greatest weapon. I mean, we have to be practical and we have to learn. Uh, for people who think that you're going to war against the capitalists physically, it's not that you can't do them damage, but that won't fix the problem. In fact, it would justify the capitalists in bringing more what they call law and order. It would justify them in their killings and arrests and persecution. That's not the way to do it, even though that's the quick impulse. That's what happens with the uneducated. And the Messiah understood that. That's why he wasn't trying to get into a wrestling match with these authorities. And he told Peter, don't worry about it. You know, he that lived by the sword died by the sword. The wisdom in which he was bringing to the table, it escaped so many people because of our emotion, how we feel. You know, it's, people always, we have this tendency to react, but we have to think things out. And the time to learn to do that is now. I mean, it's difficult to try to start thinking things out when you're back against the wall and you're desperate. A lot of people are going to find themselves in that position. So the wisdom of understanding and education, because if you kill if you kill 100 capitalists today, 200 capitalists will be taking their place tomorrow. You can't do it that way. Um, so it's a as in closing, it's just some things I want to take with us, but I want to go through this first so people could see and hopefully gather as we doing this research. What is it that we ought to do? And because the capitalists, you can't coexist with the capitalists. They won't let you. You can't go off and set up. And like I told people before, I was under the impression years ago, you go off, set up your own little commune. That idea works when you think um, according to the traditional religious points of view. But more study of the prophet. That's not what the master's saying. The master is calling people to engage in struggle. That's what I'm learning. And so you really can't coexist with them. To go off and set up your own little communes, and like I said, I was under that impression once. But once you get more education, you realize, how does that work? Okay, you get a person go off and set up their own little communities, but their communities isn't self-sufficient. Not if they modern. What do you mean modern? Not if they have cars, not if they have drywall, doors, glass, modern roof, any type of modern building materials. If they're using power tools, and they mind they're self-sufficient. But at the end of the day, your solar paneling and everything else like that, when your solar paneling go down, where you gotta go? And while you're running off in the mountains to go live in the mountains, and because you have that that luxury, if you will, or a savings or whatever you may have, um, you have a lot of people who allowed you to make that escape. These are the people who labor to produce your building materials, to build your houses all off that you all off in the hills. You know them power tools you use. It took some children digging and stuff like that, and people, exploited people digging in the dirt to go into the ground to extract copper, just so you can have power tools. So this idea of running off and doing your own little thing, it don't work. I'm saying that part, but ultimately, as long as you don't possess the means of production, it won't work. And if people don't look at history, you won't realize that. You got to look at history. The means of production are essential. And when I mean a means of production, I'm not talking about nobody growing their own food. I'm talking about the owner of mines of the iron ore. Okay, the people will have the rights to the flow of water, timber, okay, and the equipment and the machinery to produce and make machinery and equipment. So if you don't have that, you're wasting your time. And you probably get a generation or two living off in your secluded area before the capitalists invade. Because you can't coexist with them. They got to continue to expand. Only thing you can do is stand up and fight the good fight. And eventually, as the master said, take the kingdom. But if you're not educated, you can't. You don't know how. And so, look at some of this stuff we're talking about. How in the world did the capitalists come into the possession of wealth to begin this mode of modern day capitalism? Meaning, where did he come with how did he get the wealth to purchase the mines or the timber and the equipment and the machinery and the wealth to purchase labor power? Where did it come from? So that's what we're looking at today. All right. And it's some things I want to bring out in this discussion. And in fact, last week we won't be in chapter 23 much today, but we're pretty much going off of page 714 in the Penguins edition, when Karl Marx argued from our standpoint, from our present standpoint, it therefore seems likely that the capitalists once upon a time became possessed with money by some form of primitive accumulation. And so last week we started to look at some things. Conquest. So we went to the book of Daniel. We're gonna be in the book of Daniel as well. And the book of Daniel, chapter 7, we're going to look into that. And but before we go there, I want to bring something back to our minds that we probably, well, no doubt, we have discussed it before. And that's in Luke chapter 4. I want to put this in our minds right now. Hopefully, we can begin to understand the depth of devil worship. We can begin to understand the depth of the very society in which we stand, and hopefully become convicted enough and convicted and zealous in teaching and spreading the message of the destruction of the capitalist society. Now, Luke chapter 4, this is when the Messiah was tempted by that evil force in whom we call Satan. Luke chapter 4. And starting at verse 5, it reads, "And the devil, taking him up into an high mountain, showed unto him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time." Now, he showed him all the empires of the world. The devil did. Yeah, Satan. Keep that in mind. "And the devil said unto him, All this power will I give thee." Okay. The devil showed him the kingdoms of the world, and then the devil began to talk about the power of the kingdoms. And he said, "This power I will give you, and the glory of them, for that is delivered unto me, and to whomsoever I will, I give it." Now, since we're talking about the fourth beast in Daniel chapter 7, and we have this testimony in the gospel that the devil have power at this time to give the nations power and glory. Now understanding the material world around us and learning about the material world around us, this will help us understand how did that happen? Meaning, how did they get their power? See, this is what we're looking at today. Primitive accumulation. And I repeat it so people can learn the language, and it helps me as well. Okay, idealism means it's all spiritual. You really don't have any practical or concrete or material connection with things. So when you read this as an idealist, it is Satan who just gave the kingdoms their power. That's it. To me, that's shallow. But if you use dialectical materialism, like Karl Marx argues, you dialogue on the material world and you reason using the material world around you. Well, what is it that happened, or what was going on? What was the processes that were taking place to cause the kingdoms of the world to have power and glory? That's important. Now, if we go to Revelation now, chapter 13, because we were looking at this beast in Daniel chapter 7, and it appears that John is making a reference here to this beast in Daniel chapter 7, but he made it a one composite beast. He didn't break it down into four beasts like Daniel did. He put them all together. And I believe, for a quick answer, that was done because the empires, each one that came after the next, just absorbed the culture. So the Medes and the Persians absorbed the culture, some of the culture of the Babylonians, and then the Medes and the Persian and the Babylonian culture was absorbed into the Greeks, and ultimately those cultures was absorbed into the Romans. They still kept some of their own, but they absorbed each one into the next. But so that's why I understand John will be looking at this beast as a composite beast. But his focus is really on the fourth beast, the dreadful and terrible one. And that's Revelation 13. So we begin to understand, okay, well, what is it then? How is it? What happened in the real world and that allow these kingdoms. What did God allow to happen in the real world to have these kingdoms get power and glory? So we go to Revelation 13. Let's establish something. And starting at verse 1 in Revelation 13. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, which signifies the Greeks. His feet were as the feet of a bear. That was symbols of the Medes and the Persians. And his mouth as the mouth of a lion, which were the Babylonians, and making reference to Daniel chapter 7. And the dragon, notice this, the dragon. This is the dragon gave him, this beast, this empire, his power. Because that's what he just finished saying in Luke. The power and glory of the kingdoms, Satan said he was able to give to the nations. So the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And if you want to know who the dragon is, you'll find that out in Revelation 12 and 9. And that great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil. Okay, so we're looking at the dragon, the serpent, Satan. And he have given this empire its power and seat and great authority. Now that's what we're going to go and look in Daniel a little bit as a little review. But I want to show you in verse 4 in Revelation chapter 13, where John the Revelator is giving us a clue. And they worship the dragon, or they worship the devil. Okay, so if we use the method of interpreting the world around us, as Marx called dialectical materialism, we could probably begin to understand what it means to worship the devil. You know, not running off in the woods, sacrificing chickens and all this other stuff, you know, what they show us on TV, you know. But what we looking at the worship, see, they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, signifying it again. This power and authority, shalom, Sister Sandal. This power and authority is being brought to our face again. They worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worship the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, and who is able to make war with him. Now, think about that a little bit. They're bragging in its military might. Well, how was this military might used? It was demonstrated in conquest. And whatever is happening in this government, as the people work together for this society to run, and the people defend this society by taking up arms and going to war, or as the people want to expand this empire, and they take up arms and they go to war for expansion and conquest, we can start to build a case of devil worship. Whoever you yield yourself to obey, you are a servant to whom you obey. That's pretty much what this is about. So understanding how the system and the society operates will help us. Now, this was the beast. Now, I'm going to go back just a little bit, because I know we started in the 1400s last week, and we will go back there again and read some things. But because I started here, I want to work our way up. So when we're looking at this beast, uh, there's different phases of this beast. Daniel began to explain that. So you have this beast seven head with, well, you have this beast with 10 horns, and eventually another horn rose up and destroyed three of the other horns, and that was over several centuries. If historically speaking is correct, that the tribes which were destroyed with the Ostrogoths, Hurrians, and the Vandals. You know, that was over a couple of 100 years. So you have this progression of this beast. Now, when that little horn rose up, we understand a little horn to be this feudal power, uh, whom we call the papacy today. But before the papacy, the beast still, as Daniel said, because he said, who can make war with the beast, right? So we go back to that Daniel chapter 7. See if we could put some of it together here. Going back to Daniel 7. Daniel wanted to know the truth of the fourth beast. And Daniel chapter 7 and 23. Daniel 7 and 23. Hold on, I'm sorry, I'm losing. Gotta scroll down so I could keep up with the chat. Okay. It reads, for he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and tread it down, and break it in pieces. Now, he got to tread it down and break it in pieces. Now, this is in the context of him receiving. Now, that's why he said, well, who can make war with the beast? He's going to tread the earth down and break it in pieces. But this is a part of primitive accumulation. This is a part of the power and the glory of the beast. This is how he's going to achieve his power and glory. And all those who are beneficiaries of it, all those who are promoters of that sort of empire, they become accomplices. See, when we're looking at the kingdom of God and the message of God, we have to look beyond our neighborhoods. He's the God of the entire universe. And as I said before, the people become accomplices. And they might not realize it. And you say, Brother Judah, why you say that? Because it says the devil deceived the whole world. And I say his deception is great. You don't know. You just literally don't know. But at the end of the day, you don't know because you don't seek. Okay? That's why he said, those who seek shall find. He ain't just say he's going to fall in your lap. Those who seek, you shall find. Those who knock, it shall be open. And there is a mentality among the people today, and it's been on, this is going not just, in our generations, but especially during prosperity, times of prosperity, people very seldom want to do the work to learn, to study, and understand. So look at this beast. He said, look, he's going to devour the whole earth. Now, I'm going to go into Tacitus. He is a SOG, son of God. I did get the message, and God willing, just to let you know before I forget that, God willing, we can get that thing scanned and posted to you as far as the dictionary, okay? I did catch that message, just to let you know. Okay. Now, Tacitus is a Roman historian. And looking at the life, this is one of the last books in the complete works of Tacitus, the life of Cnaeus Julius Agricola. The life of Cnaeus Julius Agricola, page 695. We're going to talk about Pax Romana. Satan said he have given the nations their power. We got to understand how they get that power. We gotta learn. You know, and once you realize, well, wait, you know, because we could come up with different plans. You're like, well, you know what? That actually won't do it. You know, so I think about people glorify that Black Wall Street business, and they think, you know, you go off and, you know, Nation of Islam, you go off and set up a nation within a nation and all this other stuff. I've been through it. I heard it. It sounded good to me at one time, but I've learned that won't work. Nope, it won't work. It goes back again, like I said, to owning the means of production. Two is the capitalist will continue to expand. The capitalist will intervene in your plans as long as they own the means of production, as long as that they're in power. Let's say you go get some land, don't take much for them. You know what? For the sake of the state and for commerce, we're going to build the roads here. We're going to open up. We're going to transform this country area into such and such to bring development. And through the process of eminent domain, you're gone. And if you decide to stay because of the exploitive nature of the state, they will raise taxes up so high that it will push you out. See, it's too many. They have too many levers to pull. That's why you can't coexist with them. And if we get settled and believe that, you know, we could just go and just do our little thing and not mess around with them, you are in a dreamland. Starry-eyed dreamer. I know about it because I remember being there. Until I come to the grim reality that the only thing that's going to be of any worth is the crushing and the abolition of the system. And that cannot happen unless there is an educational campaign, a counterinsurgency to go against Western propaganda, diligently go against them to speak to the people, all who will hear and who will hear the Almighty's voice, to make change. Now, meaning to abolish it, not reform, none of that. To abolish it, it got to go. Period. One of the comrades posted up a speech by a 1992 speech. Was it 92? 1992 or 2002? I think it could have been 2002 maybe. But it was a speech by Fidel Castro. And once Fidel finished running it down, it was it. They destroying the water, they destroying the air, they destroying the people, they destroying the forest, they destroying everything. You can't coexist with it. But they have gone on such an educational campaign to promote their system, and they don't have a counter insurgency against them. See, it's not good enough to talk about how bad capitalism is. We have to show it and articulate it and break it down. And like Chairman Mao said, you have to convince the peasants, the ignorant peasants, that the form of government in which you're promoting, which is the kingdom of God, is better for them. That's a task, but it's doable. We just got to take it up to do it. And, you know, it's a lot of things going out there that people wasting time. They think they're going to run off in the hills and wait till Jesus comes. Okay, well, when Jesus comes, however he come and however he going to be revealed, guess what? Because you're doing that, what if you found a worker of iniquity? What is that day when it comes when he said, listen, I never knew you. Why? He said, you workers of iniquity. And we have to understand what is the master arguing. He said a worker of iniquity because he told you. if we consider ourselves servants, he said, the works that I do. He took it away from us so we can't even make a mistake. He said, the works that I do. He didn't say make up none on your own. He said, the works that I do, you shall do. He talked about the servant being as the master. And the master confronted the rich. The master told the rich, if you want to inherit the kingdom of God, that you must let go and turn loose the wealth. The master told the people, he told the rich, woe unto you, you receive your consolation now. All that stuff. Now, Galgacus. This is Galgacus' speech in the life, this is Tacitus, the life of Cnaeus Julius Agricola. And here we're going to talk about Galgacus' speech. And he's going to talk about the empire Pax Romana. Now, I want you to keep in mind. Now, picture these little villages, isolated villages, separated from the world. They're separate. Right? When you're going on conquest, you're going into new lands that's separate from you. Teaching you separation is not necessarily going to work. That's why the Black Wall Street thing don't work. None of that stuff you think gonna isolate yourself. That's not, I don't think it'll work. So Galgacus begins to say this in his speech. But there are no tribes beyond us. Nothing indeed but waves and rocks, and the yet more terrible Romans, from whose oppression escape is vainly sought by obedience and submission. So Galgacus is arguing that there's nothing beyond us in our tribes, talking about his territory. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that he was a part of the British Isles as Rome was coming to occupy it, get a stronghold. And the argument he's presenting, he said, listen, he said, these terrible Romans, from whose oppression escape is vainly sought by obedience and submission. So you could be submissive and obedient. You're still going to be oppressed. Now, this is the beast that we were reading about in Revelation 13. Who can make war with the beast? See, that's who we're reading about here right now. Now we're looking at the real world. How did it get its power? Now, and its seat in great authority. Now, Galgacus' speech continues. It says, robbers of the world. So we got two things, oppression and robbery. These lay the foundations of the power structures of the world. But it gets a little better. Robbers of the world, having by their universal plunder exhausted the land. Now, remember what we read in Daniel? Daniel chapter 7. Now, this is out of a Roman historian. And so in Daniel chapter 7, verse 23 again, he says, and he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And what do we have Galgacus saying? The terrible Romans whose oppression escape is vainly sought by obedience and submission, robbers of the world, having by their universal plunder exhausted the land. They rifle the deep. They pillage in the deep and the land. Just like Daniel talked about. Dreadful and terrible. Stamp the residue with the feet of it. Pillaging the entire earth. Now, when the educational apparatuses of modern day, when our children go to school and they begin to teach them the mannerism of the beast, they proudly boast that the Western civilization is none other than patterned after the Greco-Roman Empire. So if it's patterned after the Greco-Roman Empire, to what extent? And remember, the devil gave him his seat and power and great authority. And the people worship the devil. Now, Galgacus said they rifle the deep. If the enemy be rich, he says, they are rapacious. If he be poor, they lust for dominion. Neither the east nor the west have been able to satisfy them because they're pillaging the entire world. This is the beast. And eventually the Revelator is going to show us a woman upon the beast. Remember why we're going through this. Primitive accumulation. So before you get into industry and business, this laid the foundation. And it's interesting. First you've seen the beast and the people glorying in its military might. And when we learn historically, it went on conquest to rob and to pillage the earth and the water and the deep and to oppress all those who they bring into submission. Then eventually the Revelator began to bring in a woman who rode the beast. And so we follow that woman. My understanding, Zechariah was talking about the likeness would be in a measurement. And measurements and weights and measures are found in commerce. So the woman taking her abode, the foundation of the commercial or mercantile world is the beast, or the military might of the beast and the plundering of the beast. So therefore, everything we have in this modern world is stained with blood. Everything we have. They have weaved, the societies have weaved themselves a tangled web. And you have to take your time to get to the roots. The entire society is abominable. Galgacus continued. He said, listen, the east or west isn't able to satisfy them. Alone among men, they covet with equal eagerness poverty and riches. To robbery, slaughter, plunder, they give the lying name of empire. They make a solitude and call it peace. Now, this is the exact same thing you see today in the Western world. The Empire of America, the empires of Western Europe, they supposed to police the world. They supposed to rid the world of all terrorists and bring peace. All in the meanwhile, they're doing exactly what gave the beast in Revelation 13 its power, seat, and great authority. They're doing the exact same thing. And the people who worship the beast are doing the exact same thing. But they call it peace. Peace. But the robbery, slaughter, and plunder is none other than empire. None other than empire. I'll conclude with this part. Our goods and fortunes they collect for their tribute. Our harvests for their granaries. Our very hands and bodies under the lash and in the midst of insult are worn down by the toil of clearing forces or force and morasses. You see what he described? Plunder and robbery, the taking of the resources of the land after the Romans invade. And then after they take the land of the resources, or after they take the land and rob the land and plunder the land of the resources, as he said earlier, he said they exhaust the land and they rifle the deep. Once they do that, then they take the indigenous people of the land and put them to work. And if the indigenous people of the land can't work to extract these resources, then they will go out and find other labor. And whether it was the African from slavery, or whether it was the um, poor and oppressed, jobless, propertyless Europeans who was loaded on a ship to come labor. So I'm reading this to show you the beast, how it got its power, its seat, and great authority. Now I want to read something to you out of Lenin. I've read this before, but I want to read it again as to bring it into our memory. To bring it into our memory. Let me see. And with this in mind, maybe I'll actually have to come back to it. But with this in mind, this is tied into primitive accumulation, or the foundations of the capitalist society. Okay? And all that we see today, all that we live on today, whether for those, even those of us who live in luxury, those of us who have what we say some things, or those of us who's living a good life, or those of us who want to live the so-called good life, I think we need to look at these things and learn about these things, because the judgment of God is upon the inhabitants and is going to increase and increase. And if the people do not understand, then they're going to perish. Now, page 46, section 2, under the subtitle, Three Sources and Three Component Parts of Marxism. This is out of Lenin Selected Works, Volume 1. I want to make this connection here. He's speaking of Karl Marx. And Lenin says of Karl Marx, having recognized that the economic system is the foundation on which the political superstructure is erected. Okay, the economic system is the foundation on which the political superstructure is erected. And the growth of the economic system, or the establishing of the economic system we have just read out of Tacitus, is robbery, is plunder, is pillaging of the deep, is pillaging of the land, and it's the oppression of the people. Having recognized that the economic system is the foundation on which the political superstructure is erected, Marx devoted his greatest attention to the study of the economic system. Marx's principal work, Capital, is devoted to a study of the economic system of modern, that is, capitalist society. So, the economic system, that's what it's built upon. And now we're seeing the modern capitalist society, how it's built, the foundations of it. So we started with the promise, or the temptation by Satan to the Christ. And if we go back to Daniel 7, and Daniel talked about this beast. Daniel chapter 7, verse 7, it says, after this I saw in the night visions, and beheld a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth, and devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet, with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. Now skip down to verse 23. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. Shall tread it down and break it in pieces. Now, last week, we were reading out of the veins of Latin America. The veins of Latin America. Now, for the time frame, now, this beast, if back in, let me show you something. Back in Daniel 7. At this moment in time in Daniel chapter 7, he began to talk about this beast that had the 7 heads and 10 horns. But he said in verse 25, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time, times, and a dividing of times. So this beast and his influence to change times and laws will be for a time, times, and the dividing of times. So far, we understand that to prophetically be speaking of 1,260 years. Each day representing a prophetic year. A prophetic year. So, from what we understand so far, Justinian gave strength to the feudal power in roughly the date, you have a date that's out there called 538 AD. And then it's commonly understood that in 1798, the feudal power lost its strength from the French, Napoleon Bonaparte. And it's a lot of revolution that was going on among the French. I mean, it extended all the way into Haiti. And the Jacobins and men who rose up to overthrow. It's like the Paris Commune. That was a movement that overthrew the rich. And that's what Marx and them drew from when as they looking at revolution, understanding that these capitalists must be overthrown. It didn't last long. A few weeks later, the French came and regained power. But Marx and others, those who come after him, they all argue to really get a grasp or to understand social movements, you have to look at and examine past social movements and realize it is doable. And you learn from the mistakes. And I will argue, yes, the greatest mistake is that these social revolutions haven't done it in the name of the God of Israel. And I also believe, whether I'm right or wrong, we won't understand the effects of social revolution in the name of the God of Israel unless we begin to do the work. Because when you begin to do the work, your actions causes reactions. Your words goes into other people's mind and souls with talents and ideas. So to really see the fullness of the what do you say, the word I'm looking for, to see the fullness of the potential of the work, then we have to begin to do it. That's why I guess that's what God argued. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. When you start to do them, then you're going to actually see the effects. Lenin volume. This was the selected works of Lenin. selected works. Not collected, but selected. Selected works is 3 volumes. Okay. Now we left off in the veins of America. The veins of Latin America. We see that this beast was given 1,260 days. So now you're looking at over 1,000 years to make an influence over the earth and changing times, laws, and establishing a dominant culture on the globe. Napoleon Bonaparte was the one who removed the feudal order while the feudal order was perishing. And I'm bringing this out so you can sort of pay it, if you can, while we're looking through it, you can take notice of the struggle that's going to go on. As the feudal order perished, then the small craftsmen, the handicraftsmen, the serfs who were able to gain property, they're going to create a new class, the merchant class and the capitalist class. And while the capitalist class is collapsing, while the feudal class is collapsing, the nobles, the nobility, the church, in so many words, the capitalist class will come on a rise. And that's what was going on. 1798, at that time, America was definitely developing. And America was none other than a predominantly Protestants who the colonists who wanted to set up a society freed from the restrictions of the church. And more or less these restrictions was economically. Okay? So in doing that, setting up America, they're going on conquest. Now, we looked at page 19, where we talked about the Spaniards crave gold like hungry swine. He said they were like monkeys. All right, so we read that last week, but now I want to go a little further, and I want to look at this, page 28. And it says plunder. This is under the distribution of functions between horsemen and horse. All right. The lust for gold, the lust for silver. Plunder. And now we're talking about the 1500s. We're talking about, the quest, and they're not even going back necessarily as far as Christopher Columbus. They're talking about the 1500s with the conquistadors. They're coming in and they're going to pillage the new world that they're finding. It says plunder, internal and external, was the most important means of primitive accumulation of capital. An accumulation which, after the Middle Ages, made possible a new historical stage of world economic evolution. Yes, it made possible a new historical stage of world economic evolution. See, when John said that, when Daniel talked about this beast being terrible than the rest, Babylon was bad. Medo-Persia was bad. But I don't think that they were on the brink of exterminating species and destroying forests where it was almost nothing left, and creating dead zones in the waters and eating up the ozone. I do not think they were as destructive as the Western culture. So this Western culture, as the plunder laid the foundation, it made possible a new historic age of world economic evolution as the money economy extended more and more social strata and regions of the world became involved in unequal exchange. This enormous mass of capital, Mandel notes, created a favorable climate for the investment in Europe, stimulated the spirit of enterprise, quote, the spirit of enterprise, unquote, and directly financed the establishment of manufacturers, which in turn gave a strong thrust to the Industrial Revolution. So he's running it down from plundering of the New World and the investment. So Karl, remember, those of you who was in the first class, this was what Karl Marx was breaking down. He said the colonies, when they came over with indentured servants and slaves, when they began to plant cotton, when they began to plant sugarcane, they were creating products for the world market. So in creating product for the world market, remember he talked about how the society was constantly revolutionizing. And now you have a greater demand. So the old shackles will be burst asunder, he said. In other words, the restrictions on a small scale economy would work no longer, because now you have a greater demand. So that means improved machinery, it means more labor. So the society continues to revolutionize. And that inevitably led to inventions, especially during the Industrial Revolution. Okay? And these inventions during the Industrial Revolution, it was all for the sake of capital and the development of capital. But we're not going to get into that at the moment, because right now I'm still looking at primitive accumulation. Now, with that being said so far, I want to go into Capital Chapter 31. I want to look at Karl Marx Capital, Volume 1, Chapter 31. And get another witness on what we're looking at. Bear with me a moment. Okay. Chapter 31. It's entitled Genesis of the Industrial Capitalist, or the beginning of the Industrial Capitalist. I'm going to go to page 751. This isn't the Penguins edition. This is an older volume that I have here. It says the discovery of gold and silver in America, the extirpation, enslavement, and entombment in mines of the Aboriginal population, the beginning of the conquest and looting of the East Indies, the turning of Africa into a warren for the commercial hunting of black skins, signalize the rosy dawn of the era of capitalist production. Period. But this is what's given the nation or the empire's power, seat, and great authority. You have to have military might, again, to do this, to take the land, to take the gold and the silver. And he said even the entombment of mines in the Aboriginal population. People died there. They died mining. They do it today. They dying today, doing the same thing. And like I was talking about a few weeks ago, just like we don't pay attention from the food, from the farm to the dinner table, we don't pay. A lot of people just simply don't know all of the things we have today, what it takes to get here. What it takes to get here. Check your mics to make sure your mics are muted. Somebody mic is unmuted. These idyllic proceedings are the chief momenta of primitive accumulation. That's right, hunting of the Africans, conquest and looting of the East Indies, enslavement, and the pursuit for gold and silver are the foundations of primitive accumulation. And Marx says, on their heels treads the commercial war of the European nations with the globe for their theater. So on top of conquest and them discovering a new world, invading and pillaging and colonizing other nations, the world power themselves are at war, trying to carve up the globe and take possession of different territories. So on their heels treads the commercial war of the European nations, and with the globe for their theater, it begins with the revolt of the Netherlands from Spain, assumes giant dimensions in England's anti-Jacobin war, and is still going on in the Opium Wars against China. So what we're looking at is plunder and robbery and pillaging. Now I want to go into Revelation, chapter 6. Revelation chapter 6. And this is something that I think will be helpful. Turn your Bible to Revelation chapter 6. And while you're doing that, I'm going to read a little bit more out of Veins of America. So that what we just read was capital chapter 31 and volume 1. Now, back in lust for gold and lust for silver in the veins of open veins of Latin America, page 29, it reads, it was in other parts of Europe that modern capitalism could be incubated, taking decisive advantage of the expropriation of primitive American peoples. The rape of accumulated treasure was followed by the systematic exploitation of the forced labor of Indians and abducted Africans in the mines. The colonial economy was built in terms of and at the service of the European market. So why was this going on? This colonial economy, that colonial economy consisted of the plundering of the indigenous people. It consisted of the forced labor of the indigenous people and the abducted Africans, or as Marx put it, the stealing of black skins. What did he say? He argued that the discovery of gold, this is what Marx says, the discovery of gold and silver in America, the extirpation of and enslavement and entombment, or the extirpation, enslavement, and entombment in minds of the Aboriginal population, the beginning of the conquest and looting of the East Indies, the turning of Africa into a warren for the commercial hunting of black skins. Yes, and this created the colonies. This was the foundation of the colonies. Okay, and these foundations, the colonies laid the foundation, or the colonial economy, as they're going in there, sugar cane and gold and silver and precious stones and raw materials and shipping it to the world market. All this was done for the service of the European market. The resources flowed out so that emergent European nations across the ocean could accumulate them. This was the basic mission of the pioneers. Although they applied the Bible almost as often as the whip to the dying Indians, The Spanish colony's economic structure was born subordinated to the external market and was thus centralized around the export sector where profit and power were concentrated. It was all done for the market, the plunder, the robbery of people and lands and the deep. So we read Algicus and Tacitus. He said they plundered the deep. They exhaust the land. All this was done for the market. That's how it always been done. So again, we're learning the depth of Luke chapter 4. When Satan said, listen, it's in my power to give the glory and honor, or the glory and power, to the kingdoms of the world. And look how Satan's doing it. And I actually go to Revelation chapter 6. But before we start reading Revelation chapter 6 to complement what we just read, I want to read another account. Now, when we're looking at the conquistadors and we're looking at the 1500s, this is several hundred years before the capitalists begin to be strong. So right now we're looking at the time frame when that beast with 7 heads, or the beast with the fourth beast with 10 horns, plucked up 3 horns by the root. So what we're reading right now and what we read from Tacitus, this is the real world behind Daniel's imagery. This is what he's describing. Plunder, robbery, exploitation. This is what he's describing. Now it's another book, The Conquest of Mexico by Prescott. Book 2, The Discovery of Mexico. The Discovery of Mexico. So again, this is during now Spain. Spain is one of the horns on the beast. He said 3 of the horns is plucked up by the root. But remember what we had the Ostrogoths, the Vandals, and the Heruli. They were exterminated after several centuries. So you had the Germans, and I guess among the Germans is the Dutch families. You have the Swiss, you have the French, the Frank, which are the French, the Franks, the Italians or the Lombards, the Saxons or the English, the Suevi or the Portuguese, and the Visigoths, Spanish. So what we're reading now, like the conquest and the discovery of Mexico, Spain under Charles V, we're reading about the Visigoths. Now the Visigoths is one of the horns that wasn't plucked up. It remained a power on the beast. And the Portuguese joined suit. And eventually the Dutch, and thus and such. These were all powers on the beast. You will find them in Western Europe. Okay, someone said they can't hear. So if you can hear, press a 1. I'll start with that. Let's see. Okay. All right. So it's probably her computer. All right. So the Visigoths, or the Spanish, we're going to read about them. This is during the time, again, of the 1,260 years, when it's pillaged the earth, destroyed the earth, and stamped the residue. This is in between that time. And to change times and laws, this beast was given what we understand 1,260 years. After the 1,260 years, I don't understand that beast will be destroyed, but within that time frame, it was given into his hand to change times and laws and to dominate and spread his culture on the globe. Okay, so that's what I understand by that. And at the end of the day, By 1798, the Roman culture dominated the world, and the entire globe was pretty much going after its culture and following its ways and its laws. And this is how it was happening. So now let's look at the conquest of Mexico. You've seen the earlier conquest of the beast in Tacitus, and we read a little bit so far out of the veins, out of open veins of South America. This is during the time of the conquistadors, which means conquerors. Again, all of this is the real life world of Daniel's fourth beast pillaging the earth. Now look, in the beginning of the 16th century, Spain occupied perhaps the most prominent position in the theater of Europe. Spain found her empire suddenly enlarged by important acquisitions both in Europe and Africa. And this is the dates there he's recording here from 1516 to 1518. Okay. While a new world beyond the waters poured into her lap, speaking of the new world, the Americas, while a new world beyond the waters poured into her lap, the countless wealth and open and unbound field for honorable enterprise. So the exploitation and the plundering of the new world laid this is this beast now, because it's just a part of this terrible, dreadful beast. This is one of the powers in Europe. Okay, so this opened up enterprise. So as they're funneling wealth from the exploited people, it opens up enterprise. Now, that's what I was saying earlier. It happens today. So the luxuries we have today, the computers we use today, the smartphones we use today, isn't it from the plundering and the pillaging of the second and third world countries? The fruits we eat today, the imports, the clothing, the cars. Think about it. It's all bloodstained. Go a little further. The simple people, accustomed all their days to a life of indolence and ease, sunk under the oppression of their masters. The simple people are the people who were in that new world beyond the waters, who brought in countless wealth and an open and unbound field for honorable enterprise, who opened up the enterprise and commerce for Spain. These simple people, or the indigenous people, sunk under the oppression of their masters. Now I'm gonna read you this one. I wasn't sure I was gonna read it, but I'll just read it for you, just for something to look, just to consider. Look at this. Now his name, I believe, is pronounced Hatui, Hatue. He was a Aboriginal chief. Now it says one chief indeed named Hatui, having fled originally from Saint Domingo to escape the oppression of its invaders, made a desperate resistance, for which he was condemned by Velasquez to be burned alive. It was he who made that memorable reply, more eloquent than a volume of invectives. In other words, man, he couldn't have said nothing more insulting, but it was so eloquent. Notice what he's going to explain. Now, when urged at the stake to embrace Christianity, now remember the beast, that dreadful and terrible beast, it's the 1500s. By this time, three horns have been plucked up by the root already, so we fast forward in time. This is the little horn, who's the dominant influence over Europe, France, Spain, the Germans, the Swiss, none other than the papacy. Okay, and they're promoting Christianity, the church. All right. So now Hatui, when he was to be killed, and they said urged at the stake to embrace Christianity, that his soul might find admission into heaven, Hatui inquired if the white men would go there. Oh, this is kind of comical. But he asking, okay, yeah, y'all want to know if I want to go to heaven. Let me ask you this question. Will white folks be there? On being answered in the affirmative, they told him, yeah. He exclaimed, then I will not be a Christian, for I will not go again to a place where I must find men so cruel. See, this was that Christianity of the church. So we see they're pillaging, they're robbing. All this laid the foundation to what we have today. See, when we begin to learn this stuff and understand it down to the core, we learn it can't be reformed. The message must go out that it must be stopped. It must be destroyed. The capitalist mode of production and everything that it stands upon must be destroyed. Everything it stands on. Once it's destroyed, everyone is free. But that shows the necessity of educating the people. Because if capitalists are destroyed, but yet the people remain unignorant, only thing you will have is chaos. So either way we go, when we study history, when we study our environment, God is showing us the need to be public carriers, the need to go and teach and to explain so men can be baptized. That's what he's arguing, so men could conform and want to be a part of the new order. That's what he's explaining. You got to go out and communicate with men. So it says, after the conquest, Velasquez, now appointed governor, diligently occupied himself with measures of promoting the prosperity of the island. He formed a number of settlements bearing the same names with the modern towns and made St. Jago on the southeast corner the seat of government. He invited settlers by liberal grants of land and slaves. Now you see how he's building this colony? From Europe here, come and settle here on the islands, and we will provide you with land and labor. He encouraged, and again, this is for the market. This is what we've been reading. So how did the capitalists eventually come to the market with the wealth to buy labor power and to buy the means of production? This is it. And we see a continual exploitation. From gathering the wealth and taking over the settlements of the aboriginal peoples of the world to wage slavery. It's all corrupt. All of it. No good thing in it. But it's very interesting that we're taught that it is good. In fact, we've been taught in this land that's the only way to go. We've been taught in this land that is life. This is just what it's all about. But nevertheless, let me finish here. He invited settlers by liberal grants of land and slaves. He encouraged them to cultivate the soil, and we know who's going to cultivate the soil, the slaves. And gave particular attention to sugarcane, so profitable an article of commerce in latter times. He was above all intent on working the gold mines, which promised better returns than those in Hispaniola. He longed for an opportunity to embark in these golden adventures himself. Fortune gave him the occasion he desired. So these are the explorers or the exploiters. And these accounts I'm just reading to show you that this is the foundation. This is how it's starting, and this is what it's all about. The exploitation of labor, a continual exploitation of labor. So now, if you go to Revelation 6 now, I know you've probably been waiting. Revelation 6. Revelation chapter 6. And again, when you hear me talk, my argument is not the whether Christ will return. My argument is how Christ will return. When you hear me talking about a man on the clouds, I'm not convinced it will be a man on the clouds. So it's about how. There will be a divine intervention. I believe that. But if we don't have our stuff together by that time, we're finished. If we're not on the right side and making a conscious choice now, he said many shall be deceived. We are participating in things that we have no clue is, and there's no voice. That's probably one of the biggest things. As long as we could say, don't hardly nobody hear it, ain't nobody doing nothing, all of you could think within yourselves, how often have you heard this kind of a message go out? Yes, I believe it's going out in different places. God got his people in different places. But a lot of us can say, man, it's rare. Well, that's a testimony against us. It got to be made known. And through the grace of God to give us the health and strength, we can do it. Now, Revelation chapter 6. Just looking at briefly primitive accumulation. We're going to get back to chapter 23, God willing, next week. But I wanted to take some time to look into this. Revelation chapter 6. Now notice this. And I saw when the Lamb opened, verse 1, Revelation 6 and 1. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were the noise of thunder. One of the four beasts saying, come and see. And I saw and behold a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. He went on conquest. See how the Bible bringing this into play? The conquest precedes the economic system. And it's the economic system that rides the back of the, is settled upon the empire. So when you see the woman riding the back of the beast is driven into conquest because of the economic system. It's enterprise. That's what we read. All of the plundering, that's what these historians are talking about. The reason for it was mercantilism, enterprise, business, the market. So when we read Revelation 17, now we understand the blood of the market. It's not just the saints that will be killed. They will be among those who will be slaughtered. But the saints will be speaking against it. So they really will find themselves as victims. Say they're drunk with the blood of the saints. Besides the saints being exploited, being robbed of their wages. But they're going to speak against the social system just like our master spoke against the social system, and they will suffer the consequences. Is it power in organizing? Yes, there's power in organizing. God gave us an example. Okay, I talk about 1917 too much, don't I? Okay, what about Gandhi? I mean, what kind of organizing took place? If we look at history, what kind of organizing took place for a small Indian lawyer / turned activist to gather enough people together to hear his voice and to go on a campaign to organize the masses in India to liberate themselves from the British Empire without a gun. What? Why? You don't think that's a testimony from God? You don't think God had this stuff like this stuff in history as our examples? Look. And on top of it, Gandhi said he used the techniques of the New Testament. The horse went forth, the white horse went forth conquering and to conquer. Now, what comes after? What's going on with the conquering? Verse 3. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, "Come see." And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth. Take peace from the earth. So the white horse leads to the red horse. Conquering leads to war. And that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And behold, and lo, a black horse. And he that sat upon him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see that thou hurt not the oil and wine. Now, many argue this is a controlled famine. And you see that constantly. Constantly you see that. That's what the potato famine was about. That the English, what they inflicted, if I believe it was the English, what they did to the Irish. The potato famine. It really wasn't a shortage of potatoes. But a lot of the potatoes went bad. And so the English or the British took all of the good crop by force in the fields among the Irish, taking the good crop, and the Irish starved. So along with conquest, it creates famines, intentional famines. See, the rich still have wealth in its granaries. It's the people who's been pillaged that have the unfortunate lot of lack of food. Okay, they have that unfortunate lot. Now, back to Revelation. Let me get back there. In fact, I thought I had a record here of it. Guess not for me to read today. But I did. It's just in some of these papers where I was just reading about also a controlled famine in the conquest of the conquistadors and how they withheld food and resources. But this is what we're looking at in Revelation chapter 6. And if we continue, so that red horse produced famines and lack in certain parts. Verse 6, and I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts saying, "A measure of wheat for a penny," right? See that thou hurt not the oil and the wine. Verse 7, and when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat upon him was Death, and Hades, or hell, followed him. And power was given unto him over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. This is the fruits of conquest and pillaging. Famine, death. You exterminate villages. Next thing you know, the wild beasts increase. Those who's left become victims. It's like a chain reaction. But this is an interesting part here. And when I had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. They were slain for the testimony. What testimony? And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord? Holy and true dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth. White robes were given unto every one of them. And it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. Now this is reminiscent of that Daniel 7, how that fourth beast shall make war against the saints and prevail against them. But I'm reading this part as well to understand it's a testimony in which they hold. And I am to the point now, I don't really believe that modern day religion really have been explained to us the testimony of the early followers of the Messiah. And for that matter, the testimony of the prophets. Now we almost set for this one, just again, looking into primitive accumulation, going forth to conquer. And Satan gave the people their seat, power, and great authority. Now, I want to relook at it, Revelation again, Revelation chapter 17. But before I go there, do you all remember in the book of Ezekiel when he was talking about the king of Tyrus in Ezekiel 28th chapter? And then later on, he began to call the king of Tyrus the anointed cherub. And therefore, in that language, it appears that he's talking about the power behind the king of Tyrus, which is whom we call Satan. Because he has power to give the nations glory and power. But in Ezekiel chapter 27, I'm going here to show you it's the same thing over and over again. So once we read the prophets and you go into the book of Revelation, we'll see the same pattern. So if we go to Ezekiel 27, we're going back into history, another global power, worldwide commerce and trade, the Phoenicians, Tyrus, okay? And when we go to Ezekiel chapter 27, it says in verse 1, the word of the Lord came again unto me, saying, Now thou son of man, take up a lamentation for Tyrus, and say unto Tyrus, O thou art situate in the entry of the sea, which art a merchant of the people for many isles. Thus saith the Lord God, O Tyrus, thou hast said, I am perfect in beauty. Thy borders are in the midst of the seas. Thy builders have perfected thy beauty. Clue, again, there we go. Global power. Tyrus, a merchant. The merchant of the nations. The merchant of the nations. Now, skip down to verse 12. Tarshish was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of all kinds of riches. With silver, iron, tin, and lead, they traded in thy fairs. Okay, so again, so now, brothers and sisters, when you read this, I want you to think now. Look at the polluted merchant. He's the merchant, but what does he have to do? He must go and extract resources, silver, iron, tin, lead. Then he go to another nation participating, Javan and Tubal and Meshach. They were thy merchants. What did they trade? They traded the persons of men and vessels of brass or vessels of brass in thy market. You see what this is? The same issue. Now, when we follow this down into chapter 28, who was in the seat of it? Who was at the helm? The devil. The tin came by exploitation and death, the iron and the lead. And we see people enslaved and robbed and traded in the market. People, persons of men. Verse 14, they of the house of Togarmah traded in thy fairs with horses and horsemen and mules. The men of Dedan were thy merchants. Notice this. Many isles were the merchandise of thy hand. There go colonialism right there. Verse 15 is showing how many other islands became merchandise for the global trade in Tyrus. Many of the isles were the merchandise of thy hand. They brought thee for a present horns of ivory and ebony. Now he's talking about the exploitation or the colonizing of other territory and islands. Same thing. This built, and who are we talking about? We're looking at the foundations of, what did he say? Verse 3, Tyrus, which are a merchant. So now let's go back to this Revelation 17. And I'll read a little bit of Revelation 18, then we'll open it up. Revelation 17. Yes. So when we're looking at the capitalist society, first, this is the process. We got to learn about it. Now, okay, a lot of people can agree that it's bad. Now we got to learn the nature of it. And then we can see how it's built. Once we see how it's built and really be convinced of the truth of how it's built, then we realize it can't be conformed. It can't be cleaned up. It's evil from the core. It's evil from the core. So us going off into our isolated communities, people going off and living in the hills and in the mountains to be safe or flee the cities because of martial law and all this other stuff, what's that going to do? What's that going to do? You fleeing off in the city because of a lockdown of martial law, but now you locked down in the country. Because you in the country, but you know, what does it do? You know, cats living in the country, you think you're going to escape it? Yes, and that's the facts. Eventually they come there too. All you got to do is look around you, look at the development of America 100 years ago or 200 years ago. When they first came to this country, what was it? 20% of the people who lived in the cities? And now you pushing 80%? History shows us the development. And our solutions are what? Because when we say capitalism must be destroyed, those are mountains. That's a great mountain. And like I said before, well, maybe we ought to be looking at this, if we have faith enough to say that these mountains be moved and removed into the sea, it will happen. Because the master said, look, when he was with his students and they came to that great Mount Caesarea, which was dedicated to Caesar, he declared, who do men say that I am? And he said, listen, you are the king. He said, flesh and blood haven't revealed it to you, Peter, but my Father which is in heaven. And he told Peter this. He said, listen here. Upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. The governments and the establishments of Satan will not prevail against his kingdom. What we got to do is put it to the test. See, one of the issues I think is that everyone believes that they're saints. And I can't argue with everybody. I had to come to the conclusion myself, no matter how long I've been studying the Bible, I had to come to this conclusion after I started learning this stuff that I really wasn't a Christian. I had to be honest with myself. I don't care how much traditions I've been doing, how many times I've been reading the Torah. I had to be honest with myself. This higher call of righteousness to bring justice into the world, I had to be honest. That's the part of repentance. No, I haven't been. And one of the problems is a lot of people believe that they're saints, they're servants of God and this and that. But, you very well may be. But you want to take it into consideration because the Master said, many shall come in that day saying, Lord, Lord, we prophesied in your name. We done many wonderful works in your name. And he's going to say, I never knew you. And I do not believe that's just restricted to the Sunday Christians. A lot of people in that day are going to be devastated. And I believe that the Master, he followed up, and I think this was something to look into when he followed up and said in that text, depart from me, ye workers of iniquity. It was what you were doing. Now, in order for the saints to be killed and be brought before kings and governors for his name's sake, then they got to be publishing something. They got to be teaching something. They got to be putting something. They got to be releasing a word out in this earth, out in this world. Because he said once it's out there, it's going to accomplish what it's going to accomplish. Our mouths must be open to penetrate into this globe, the message of the kingdom of God. But we got to know that message, right? And when we're looking at Revelation again, we're going to close with these two for today. Observing primitive accumulation. So when we're looking at Revelation 17 again, we looked at Tyrus, the merchant, how it was built. They made merchandise of the islands of the sea. They made merchandise of people. They had mines of gold and tin and iron. It's the same thing over and over and over again. So when you read in Luke, you realize when Satan said, I will give you the power and the glory of the kingdoms. When you follow the pattern, they all follow the same methods in obtaining this power and this glory. They all did it the same way. That's why the Master said, no, I'm not going to serve you. That means there is another socio-economic way in which he wants to bring to the world. Not the way in which the nations have gathered their glory and power. It's another way. That way in which it's manifested that we serve the God of heaven. So we've seen it in Tyrus. We've been reading about it with that fourth beast going forth to conquer, treading the earth, tearing it up, pillaging the world, pillaging the people. So it says in Revelation 17, and there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, talk with me, saying unto me, come hither. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. We learned that the waters were nations, tongues, and multitudes. So this great whore have set upon the world. That's why people say, well, you know what, that one world government, it's already here. Everything else is bells and whistles. I'm not saying it won't make no changes. It's already here. One world government already exists. People say, well, man, you're going to lose your freedoms. You already lost your freedoms. We're like hamsters in a cage. We're free insofar as to do whatever is allowed in the cage. And I was talking to a coworker about it. He said, well, you won't be able to go where you want to go. You just can't go where you want to go now. Don't have a passport and see what the power say. And if you want to go somewhere, you got to get a shot. You want to travel. What power and control? They know where you at. All they got to do is Google you. Right? All this thing about this buying and selling stuff, listen, man, that's old news. That look, like I said about the Social Security card, you cannot buy or sell legally without a Social Security card. In fact, when the Social Security card first came out, religious people said that was the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is the service of the beast. It's you, and the people have been convinced that its socio-economic way is the way. And some people want to do away with the superstitions of the beast, which the beast don't care. The beast only picked up the superstitions in Christmas just to finance its economic enterprises. But at the end of the day, everyone financed the beast, whether you're Indian, Hindu, Christian, Muslim, all denominations. And that's what we're looking at here. This great horse sit upon many waters. She's all over. And I tell people when I'm looking through the Encyclopedia of Religion, I tell people, you know what I've seen in there? Capitalism. It's actually in the Encyclopedia of Religion. Capitalism is in the Encyclopedia of Religion. Capitalism don't care what denomination you are. Come participate in the market. The great whore that sitteth upon many waters. The weights and measures are found in the capitalist society. Verse 2, with whom the kings of the earth, the sovereigns of the earth, have committed fornication or profanity. And what is more profane than the pillaging of the earth, the pillaging of the waters, the destruction and pillaging of peoples, exterminating peoples? They have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. They've been intoxicated with the delicacies of her profanation. See, that's why he say wine. He didn't say gall. You know what I'm saying? He said wine. Wine is a luxury item. Wine is an item you sit back and sip on and drink to enjoy yourself. So this wine she's giving it, you know, when a person receives wine, that's not anything to turn your nose away from. And this is something, this is a form of celebration. This is you know, wine is talking about a time of celebrating and getting together and enjoying yourself. So what we're saying is that the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. What she have been given to the people. And the people believe they can have this luxury. They can have this good life. All that, you know, that's what you have when you're sipping on wine. You know, that little wine and cheese. That good life. She's been promising them a good life. But it's going through this good life is only... It has only been made by way of plunder, robbery, slaughter, slavery, exploitation. Verse 3 says, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication, decked to the brim, full of wealth. And we've been learning how the wealth got there, haven't we? Now we can see how bloody it is. Going to Revelation 18 now. The warning. Verse 4. I'll start a little higher, actually. Verse 1. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. My question to the people is, do you think that one day, one afternoon, or one night, you're going to be awakened by a loud voice in the sky, don't know where it come from, just this loud voice hollering to everybody, literally. You're going to be awakened to something. Depends on where you at on the globe. You're going to hear this loud voice saying, coming, from this angel. He said, he seen an angel coming down having great power, and the earth was lighted with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen. You think you're going to hear that literally? You think you're going to hear a voice in the sky? Maybe you will. Maybe. But what if it's not that way? So my question would be, even to myself, well, when did the voice start to cry out? And it didn't say that the voice would cry out for 30 minutes, 24 hours. He didn't say how long that voice will cry out. Right? How long will it be crying out? What will it cry? Mightily. Babylon the great is fallen, is fallen. That's a good one. See, I think that's part of it. You will hear the stock market crash, for example. And I'm using this just as an example to show that it's going to be natural things around us that's going to reveal these things. Not necessarily this is what the angel is saying per se. Right now, the angel is crying out, but this is a good example of how you might not hear a voice in the sky, but we have to learn to understand and interpret the things around us. Because that's how God speaks and communicates. So this voice is saying Babylon the great is fallen. It's fallen, and it's become the habitation of devils and the hold of every foul spirit and the cage of every unclean bird. That's happening, as far as I would argue. It is that now, foul. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. This is verse 3. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Symbolized, if you could say, by wine. The merchants of the earth got rich. Kings of the earth also reap the benefits from the merchants or the corporations. But notice the warning. But verse 4 says, I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Now, the argument is to flee physically a geographical place, to go off but wait a minute. It's a conundrum now. If you're looking at it that way, you say, Brother Judah, why you say that? Because you can't forget what we read in chapter 17. And what we read in 17, verse 1, it says, and there came one of the 7 angels, which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. And what did he say about this woman, or about this one that sitteth upon many waters? With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Verse 18. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. So if you're going to come out of Babylon, okay, you're going to leave one king and go to another king. You're going to leave one nation and go to another nation. But it says the woman reign over the kings of the earth. Now, what king don't she reign over then? Because he's saying come out of her. And if we're looking at it like we got to physically go off in the hills or go to another country, okay, then that could be a problem, because he just finished explaining that she has spread over many countries. And then we've been reading she go on conquest. She got to, because she used up the resources, so she got to go get more resources. That's just the facts. So the voice is saying, I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Why did I go through this today? So we can begin to understand what those are. Are we beginning to see, or if you haven't seen already, the sins of Babylon? Plunder, robbery, exploitation, the plundering and exhaustion of the land and the water, the people, the robbery of wages, forced labor, wage slavery. This is how the wealth is accumulated. This is how she was able to deck herself with precious stones, silver, and gold. So now, once we learn that, we have to understand how her sins are committed and get a little bit more into the intricacies and understand the processes. Because remember, Revelation 13 said that the world worshiped the dragon, probably because they don't understand how her sins are committed. Why not? Because Revelation 17:5 says, mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. Mystery. That's what we discussed last week. Secret. The secret of the ruling class or the power structures is secrecy itself. Secrecy is the daughter of deception. Satan deceives the whole world. We don't know what we're doing. We think we got an honest living. We think we law-abiding citizens. All in the meantime, we full of the devil. Because we've been deceived. Say the Flea Guys group say now the mark of the beast has nothing to do with labor, power, or capitalism. It is a microchip coming in the near future. Yeah. And I guess I'm not convinced of it. Microchip is the bells and whistles. You got that mark of the beast before you even get the microchip. So he's saying, come out of her, my people. Now we're going to get ready to close with this. Her sins have reached unto heaven. And in verse 6, it says, reward her as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works, and the cup which she hath filled to her double. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. See all of the luxuries? And the cost of the luxuries was built upon torment and sorrow. That's why the text is reading to us so much more. Give Babylon double. All of the beneficiaries of the oppressive system, punish them with double misery. Because the riches came from misery. So it says she lived deliciously, and it says, for she saith in her heart, I sit as a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. So it's not just a woman. This is a woman who's riding a beast. She shall be destroyed, and is manifested what John said and Daniel, the beasts themselves will be cast into the eternal flame. The entire social economic system will be crushed, in so many words. The whore will be burnt with fire. The beast who conjure her up through plunder and traffic and mercantilism, their empires will be given to the burning flame. And the text is saying, come out of her. You have to find a new way. Now, do we play a part in that? Working towards the beast being cast into the eternal flame. And Daniel described, if this is a description of Daniel, Remember, he's seen the beast's body given over to the burning flame. But the only flame Daniel mentioned in Daniel chapter 7 was the fiery flame that was proceeding from the throne of God. And when we're looking at the throne of God, Psalms, what is it, 80, is it 89? Psalms 97, I believe, as well. The throne of God foundation is justice. And you know, just think of it. Justice will destroy. Once people build and understand justice and pursue justice, the byproduct is that the beast and the whore will perish. Because she's built on injustice. So if you bring justice to the world, if you speak of justice, the wonderful works of God, the kingdom of God, and show people the right way, and God move their hearts to work and have a zeal towards justice and bringing justice. Yeah, the beast and the whore will be destroyed. The rug will be pulled right from up under her. I'm going to open it up for questions and comments. This was our little detour on primitive accumulation. God willing, we're going to go back to chapter 23 next week. If anyone have any other questions about it, I have some more stuff here that I could read concerning primitive accumulation and the robbery from slavery to, you know, it's just a bunch of stuff. And I'm sure many of you probably have some literature on it. But let's open it up for dialogue, feedback, and let's see where we at as far as whether we all in agreement with this and we seeing how this is unfolding and whether it was edifying. So please unmute your mics if you have a question. If you're not speaking, just mute your mic so we won't get feedback. And if there's anything that wasn't clear today or you want more clarity on it, let me know. And God willing, I'll, try to clarify it. All right. So please, if you have any questions or comments, now's the time.
Yeah, greetings, everyone, in peace. And Bro Judah and company. This is, Ken or SOG. I'm just here elaborating real quick. Hope everybody's doing well.
Yes.
Yeah, I really chime in, and I'm gonna be real brief. But what I find real interesting, in the studies that you've been getting as of late is just what really gets me is the whole mark of the beast, especially with the economy being shut down currently to a degree and all over. And what's getting me is the microchip, and it's something coming, something always coming. It could be nothing. Don't worry, something coming. And meanwhile, it's hit things that Satan is hidden in plain sight. And what gets me is a lot of the people, they want to state, they call themselves elders, as with due respect to them, they're giving the people the same logistics and rubbish. It's like, when I said the flea guys and they send them out, because it really can get disturbing, because they're not telling the people what's really missing. They're trying to look and people are trying to find it, but this whole microchip and there's something coming and all these conspiracies, just religious in the sky stuff is it's just amazing, man. And the things that you always bring out, Bro Judah, and it's very rare. And as you see me come and elaborate on, I was the only one to myself I thought was in that mindset, because that's what I study on. That's the thing that I'm always constantly, digging and edifying, some few brothers and sisters on. And it's just not out there. You go on YouTube and it's still religion. You can call it camp, you can call it Israelite this. It's just another form of Christianity. And it's like, man, listen, people are still serving mammon. People are not aware of what's going on. And that's all I want to say. And you can continue to elaborate. I'm sure everybody else has some comments. Hope everybody's doing well. And that's that. As far as the city, Macmillan, yeah, Bro Judah, hey, there's no sweat. I'm just gonna make sure when I do find it, it's just the right version. So whenever you screenshot and post to the group, everybody else can see it as well. But until you get hold to it, it's fine. And then that'll be that. But other than that, peace and blessings to y'all, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Brother Ken. And I feel your frustration. Honest to God, I do. Because, you know, what people are pursuing and what they're dealing with, it's like, even just trying to find words to it. I feel your frustration. Honest to God. And it is amazing. It is amazing. It is. And I'm at a loss for words too. Like you say, wherever you go, like you say, whether it's camp or wherever it is, it's pretty much a form of the religious Western Christianity. Pretty much is the underground template. Yeah. So yeah, I feel you, brother. Good. Thanks for the edification. And yeah, what I'll do, God willing, I'll ask one of the comrades to scan that sheet and then send it off so people can have it and copy it. A copy of that page in the Macmillan Dictionary. So God willing, that should be it.
Brother Judah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What's happening?
Hey. Man, I done threw my back out over here. Oh, man.
Oh, man, come on. I know how that goes.
I don't understand it. But anywho, getting on this means of production. I don't mean to take it like off topic, but it's almost like a little testimony, I guess. But it's just a thought process that I had. And I done heard you say means of productions 100 times. I didn't even told you about the work truck and my boss. Well, I ain't been there in a while, but that's even better. But I done talked about his means of production and how he holds it, and that without the means of production, we can't be who we are meant to be, do what we're supposed to do if we don't hold the means of production. So I was thinking, I was in, I do music. And the other night, I was in my basement. I got my own studio, and I was recording. And I thought about it. I said, back in the day, over the years since I've been doing music, I would have to go to other people's means of production to do, to hone my craft and my skills or whatever. And you can never be and get what you're supposed to get on the clock when you don't own yours. And I was, when I got my own studio, time became no longer the essence or factor. We was able to work out what we needed to work out, all the kinks, all of this, all of that, by owning these means of production. And that's when it hit me and I thought about you, I was like, means of production. But it has to get way bigger than just my little studio. All of the means of production for everybody, whatever it is that we're doing, we have to dispossess them that possess the studios. We have to dispossess them. And we have to own this stuff. And I don't mean just so we can own it in order to still partake in the system. No, recreate the system, which is in that book right there. Equity and justice. You understand what I'm saying? Now, in a small little example, he that don't have a studio, come over here, keep your money in your pocket. Work out what you need to work out. Just, for a small example, not saying, whatever. But that's just the way that it hit me. That's just the way that it hit me the other night. And I was just like, wow. Out of all the times I heard Brother Judah say that, I just not got it. That's all I want to give.
Good example. Yup, that's a microcosm of it. Exactly. It's a level of freedom, and just experiencing that. That's right. That is a level of freedom. When you have the means of production, where no one else can dictate to you or charge you exorbitant fees or do this and do that. Once you have the means to do what you need to do, that changes the world. You know, so that's a good example, no question. That is it. That's a perfect example of what we're working towards, or what the Creator promises. But like you said, they got to be dispossessed, and now it's working. And God, He got His out there who's going to hear His voice. We just got to be those mouthpieces, if He allow. So that's why you got to be out there, whether you at the table somewhere, you're putting out through the music, you're talking to people, you're dropping off a flyer, and yeah, one by one, two by two. That old cliche, each one teach one, and and they will be dispossessed. They can't. God, the world won't let them. Meaning that the earth itself, like I say, they gonna fight. The earth can't tolerate this.
And that kind of like brought into my mind also the passage, I think is in Isaiah, when it say they shall build houses and inhabit them, not someone else will live in them, because obviously they own the means of the production. You understand what I'm saying? And so that's
Absolutely.
I'm like, my goodness. I be thinking like all kind of crazy stuff, but it always hit me later.
That's how it is. That's how it is. You studying it, you thinking on next thing you get that time, that moment. Oh, snaps. That connection made. There it is.
Right.
That understanding is even deeper now. Because now you feel it. It's not just a knowledge. Now you just feel an understanding. Okay, I feel what this is about now.
Yeah, and like the brother was saying about the religious aspect of it, man, I don't even argue with it no more. I don't even pick up that fight no more, because these cats, like, when you come with this angle that we coming at now you get to see who really want truth or not, because they are just act like you speaking a foreign language, like, bruh, okay, yeah, like, stay over there with that. We talking about his name. Is it Yahweh Shai, Yahweh? Now, what you talking about over there, you leave that over there. I'm like, wow. So I don't even get in that arena no more. It's like we on something totally different, and we are.
Yep. Yeah. Ostracized by our own people. They still turn the neck up after all of these generations. That's what Isaiah said about them. They just turn the neck, man. Turn the shoulder. But I'm being convinced this is the road to liberation. So I feel you on that too. I don't really get too much into all of that arguing, debating over certain things. Not really. It's not a priority. Every now and again I might pick up something, dealing with doctrines if I feel a need, but it's not. It's definitely not a priority. And certain things I just don't even, like you said, debating over such and such names, and But if people want to know different things, I sit down and talk about and try to share things. But like I think BA he was on, and he talked about some of the stuff that the people still debating about. I'm like, okay, I'm not even comfortable in just waiting around in that world. I don't even want to be in that world. That world is played out. I always ask myself, how can people realize the need to come together to seek ways to regain the means of production? Yeah, they must. Yeah, they turn. Yeah, some do. Some turn against you, but again, not all. And that's the deal. That's the challenge of the mission, is to be witnesses throughout the uttermost parts of the world. That's what he's explaining. That's what the master's talking about. Because you got to dig for gold. You're going to run past a whole lot of rock and stone before you find gold. So you got to dig for gold. And you may find one here, next thing you know, you may find a bed of them. You may find 10, 20 here. But you got to dig for gold. And so, I know it's Sometimes it seems like, okay, this is what everybody doing, but no, not everybody. We could say the majority, but even yet and still, a minority of people is still thousands. Um, I talk about the Wobblies or the IWW workers movement, and their movement in the early 1900s, bringing people together to their plan was to take over the means of production, and they wanted to do it city by city. But they had to organize the laborers and teach the laborers this is what they want to be done and why. And so that takes study groups, that take people trying to find out and understand what it's about. And they grew into 100,000 people. And that's just a roundabout number. And once they grew to those numbers, and again, this was a time of oppression. So this message, and they was getting rid of no gender equality, none of that racial, ethnic divide, whatever profession you're in, we all need to come together, whether you're sweeping the floor or whether you are a iron worker, we all need to come together. And they taught the people why. And here they grew to and that's still a minority, 100,000. But when you get to those numbers, that's when the beasts get violent. And that's exactly what happened. When they got to those numbers, that's when they began to get physically assaulted by the empire. That's the last resort. Violence. But when you were small, just like with the early Christians, when you was a small group of 120, wasn't much. But when them men and women grew to 4,000, 8,000, and then from 8,000, the book just said they grew into a multitude. That's when you really become a problem. And, if you got that right message, you got 100,000 people talking about capitalism must be destroyed, not the kingdom of God is to be realized on this earth. That's powerful to me. Just to imagine, that's powerful. And you have intelligent men and women who could break it down and articulate it and show that all of the movements of times past, its entire goal was to bring forth what the Bible have already described as the blessings of Abraham. I believe that's just a powerful message, personally. And but to grow to thousands is it's just about putting the work in. And it start one person at a time. One person at a time. And all the events that's happening gives us ammunition to grow. We pray that the servants of God will be sustained. But, the truth is, yeah, man, it's hard times on the horizon again. Hard times. When people come out of this situation, what's going on now, as far as people being out of work and trying to struggle, people already was struggling. Most poor people never recovered from the economic downturn of 2008. But we have to seize the opportunity. We have to take note on what's going on and then convert it into the message of the kingdom. And it'll grow. If that's what God, especially if this is God, if this is not what God wants us to do, then it won't. But if it is, then it will. And what we got to do is put it to the test and see. Somebody was going to say something?
Yes, it's me, Brother Judah.
Shalom.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, what I wanted to say is, I'm following James Corbett of the Corbett Report, as you know, from my buddy from Japan, and he brought out an interesting video yesterday or the day before, about how the Corona crisis is really helping the elite. Well, a lot of people, also non-religious folks, are saying at the moment that it's crippling the New World Order, but they are failing to see how it's strengthening the New World Order, basically. Because, for instance, like here, you're not allowed to travel to another country if you don't have a special passport. Or if you have to travel because of business or you're in healthcare or whatever, you get a special passport at the moment. Otherwise, you're not able to leave the country. So there's no use in fleeing where. And something he said also, if I find interesting, is he's talking about decentralization of the um, government installed institutions, basically. And that's what we need to do. We need to come together locally and, farm locally and trade locally and, um, yeah, share our utilities we have at the moment locally to just build and try to expand. So, yeah, I think that's something people really should think about. I don't know how it is in the States at the moment, but that's how it is here. And they're talking about this app that you should have on your phone to prove if you are immune to the coronavirus or have been in contact with somebody who is was infected with the coronavirus. And they're really handling it seriously. And I think they're gonna roll it out like in 2 weeks or something. And then talking about the so-called mark of the beast, there's no such thing as in what they are implementing, even this. But people are saying that it is, because everyone would be obliged to have it on their mobile phone. This app, if you don't have it, and it would be a color code app like red, yellow, and green. If you have red, you cannot go anywhere. You should go in self quarantine and things like that. And if you have green, you will be able to go outside and meet other people and shop and things like that. So, um, yeah, I think really now is really the moment to bring the message to the people because they're like expecting the Armageddon at the moment because of everything what's happening,
Yeah.
so to speak.
I
So,
I
uh,
like James Corbett, and
yeah.
I gotta check it out. But yeah, he has some pretty good information.
Hmm.
I definitely I think that's a good point. Um, people are worried about leaving the borders. Like here, you can't. I'm right at Canada, so
Hmm.
cross the bridge over to Canada, but it's only essential crossings, and they they had either passport or special ID. That was already done probably a couple of years ago here in the states, where you
Hmm.
couldn't go over to Canada unless you had a either special license or enhanced license, they call it, or you know, a passport. But I think when people they looking at this, whether you can go or not, at the end of the day, if you don't have the virus or if you've had it and you have antibiotics, then there's no problems. You can go where you want to go. I mean,
Hmm.
when you just look at it practically, okay, if you got it, well, you need to go somewhere and sit and recuperate. So, I mean, when you look at it practically, like, yeah, I can cross the border, but they saying, well, I can't cross it if I'm not, unless I'm whole or I make sure I'm not sick. Okay, I won't argue with that.
Hmm.
But as far as these people saying it's the mark of the beast, again, it was what Brother Ken was saying. I don't know what that's. I mean, I can't ever say that I was really ever at all sold on the chip. I never was really convinced. That's not the school of thought that I come from as far as my teachers.
Hmm.
Because they were, my teacher Jafar, he would make points like, okay, well, why is it specifying the right hand? What if you had it in your thigh? So he would make points to show that look at the language. The language isn't talking about anything necessarily literal. So I don't know if I was ever sold on that. But you have a lot of people now that you're right. They whatever it is, and again, you're tracked already. I mean, if you got a smartphone, you're tracked. You
Yeah.
track every you are, that's not going to stop anything. If we want people to bring down a new world order, you don't. All you have to do is organize. I mean, like what Karl Marx said. Look, we have technology here to use that the capitalists themselves use for economics. And like I tell people, it's like the building of the Roman roads. Paul used the Roman roads. It helped him speedily get to different places to spread the work of the gospel. So we have technology here already that the capitalists need for themselves. So, like Marx said, they pretty much digging their own graves because they have this technology. They have to train us to use this technology. to function in their society. So the thing is, you just don't necessarily have to use this technology for what they want. So we can go all over the place, you know. And I agree with Sister Sanders also saying, look, locally, that's where it starts. That's where it starts. And if you know, even if people develop in a team, sometimes you don't have much in the team. You may have a person move from one place to another to get the team together, to get it started. You know, sometimes it happens like that. But in the meantime, you know, starting off locally, because state by state, city by city, you know, that's the only thing that's really gonna stop the beast, and that is people changing. It don't have nothing to do with everybody running off from some doggone chip, and you know, it's just like Brother Ken. I get to the point where I'm lost for words. I don't even. I don't know.
You don't know what to say because it's what the points they bring up, and as he also said, when they hear us, even for 5 minutes, those that are stuck, I call them stuck. You cannot talk to people like that. Some even get upset, and that's not how to go about it. But
Yep. And let's see, because like I say, you know, we get on YouTube, put stuff out on YouTube. I try to work the YouTube thing. Certain things I don't want on YouTube, so I don't, of course, don't get on YouTube. That's for certain reasons.
yeah, but you have enough saying get off the internet completely. You need to leave Facebook, leave WhatsApp. I'm like,
Oh yeah, no,
I'm not like that.
it's not like that. I think I was just making a point that I don't really run into a lot of the guys. I mean, I know that some may listen. They don't really leave many comments. I may get thumbs down on some of the teachings, but they don't really say much. So I haven't ran into a conflict with many of them lately. I think the early days, you know, you remember Sister Sandra, the early days,
Yeah.
but now, you know, for whatever reasons, you know, I don't. So hearing you and Brother Ak, you know, just hearing you all deal with it, it's just amazing to even see that. I guess somewhat that, man, you know, you have people who they really don't want to hear, huh? You know, even who claim to be so-called believers.
Yeah. And like you said yesterday, they just go into the blood of Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, the blood of Jesus. But she's right, basically. It's the blood of Jesus, but it's that other blood. It's that blood that he's coming to shed. That blood she will be covered in. Not in the blood that would wash our sins away, not that blood.
That's right. What about that?
And also, I'm more like James, you know, he's like, I'm gonna put all my stuff on YouTube and I'm gonna watch the system, what they do, because he's always counting on YouTube and Facebook already has, but YouTube too. Just block all his videos or make them unavailable for people in search engines and things like that. So he goes to alternative, similar sites like BitChute. You can post your videos there. It's kind of a YouTube, you know, or other sites.
I'm not familiar with those other pages. Maybe we should start doing that too.
Yeah, because the YouTube and I've seen on Facebook the last 2 weeks people posting things on permaculture, things like that. That their post is being marked as fake news, and then they don't show it to the people posting it, but they show it to the visitors, so I can see it, and then I can tell my friend like, "You posted this, and it's marked as fake news by Facebook." So real helpful stuff is now being marked as fake news because of the algorithms they use to track things like that. So yeah, I think we should be prepared and have our own websites or servers or things like that, and alternatives to YouTube and Facebook, because yeah, it's for us it's necessary to be able to communicate with each other, especially if we're all over the world, like I am in Europe at the moment. So it's
Yes.
really important to have some backup also in that sense.
That's a whole nother, that's that level of censorship.
Yeah,
No, it's fake. You know, they already trying to, what they say, the Satan come and immediately take this seed away. You're trying to bring people the truth, and then you got these people coming behind saying, "No, I don't believe that." Or like you say, it won't appear on the search engines. Because I went on